I think of those kids in Spencer and all those kids out in the country that when we went to that show at the arena, it was almost like a gift.
Yeah.
It was like our identity, we didn't have much of an identity, but it was like through that music, we felt like we belonged, that it spoke to us. And you're now giving that gift to a whole new generation of people.
Well, I mean, I hope so. I hope that people still have that passion. I mean, that for like me and for you, I mean, like, I told a story yesterday when we were doing this or whatever. It's like, seriously, man, I heard side A of 2112 by Rush and side A of Rainbow Rising, and it changed my life. Like, I left, your old room there, your parents' house up on West Hill, and I don't know if I had to ride my bike home or if my mom picked me up or whatever it was. But I went home and I was a different person. I was like, wow, this is just so good. This is amazing. I want to be part, I want in, And like you say, man, coming from that little town, right? Like in my case, the first concert I saw in Binghamton, I went and I saw Boston with Sammy Hagger, and it was at like Thanksgiving it was my 10th grade. I started Thanksgiving of 78, right? Because I know I was in 10th grade, okay? And I went with Scott Ferguson, and I forget, it was a friend of his that lived over outside of Vinetton, going towards Waverly, and his sister was old enough to drive. And I think his sister might have had a friend. So I think there was 5 of us that went to the show, right? And she stopped in Candor when there used to be a little store there, got some beer. We split a 6-pack of beer amongst us, or maybe it was a 12-pack, I don't know. Get to the show, get inside, and like you say, it was just all these people that were all like-minded, right? That's the thing, right? They were like-minded like me. They were there for the same reason I was, and that was definitely a cool thing. That was a really cool thing. You're absolutely right. And I discovered another band that I like to this day, which was Sammy Hagger, right? Like, I had never heard Sammy Hagger before, right? So immediately, I get back to Syracuse, and I go get the live record, right? And it's like all the stuff I just saw, and it was amazing. But what are these songs by this guy Montrose? Who is our Montrose, right? So there was this music store called Gerber Music in the Shoppingtown Mall in Syracuse, New York. And I go in to the guy and I'm like, look, so I bought this record. Who's Montrose? And he looked at me, he goes, what? He goes, you don't know Montrose? Come here, kid. And he takes me over. Here's the first Montrose record. He goes, you got to buy it, right? And I don't know, I didn't have enough money. So I came back when I had enough money and I bought it. So now I discovered Ronnie Montrose.
You turned me on to that.
Right?
In your room.
Yeah. I discovered Ronnie Montrose. Oh my God, wow, this is like, just blowing my mind, right? So from that, and now I've got like, okay, so Sammy was a singer and now he's doing solo stuff, and then, okay, there's more Montrose records. Well, like, I didn't really groove on like the records after the first one that much, right? And then when Sammy left, not so much, up until he did the instrumental record, Open Fire, which if you're a guitar player and you haven't heard it, you should go fucking hear it because it's amazing, all right? And, and then he had his band Gamma after that, who I was fortunate enough to see in Syracuse in my senior year. But yeah, you're right, Alan. I mean, it was just like-minded people, right? You got together and it was like, I don't know, I guess it's not Woodstock, but it was a smaller version for me, right? Like all these people that are hanging out in the arena, mostly smoking weed. Everything's cool. Everybody's happy. Nobody's fighting. It's like, we're here for a concert, man. This is great, And
I just thought, really, when I look back on it, it was like this identity thing, because I didn't have much of an identity. And it's like being able to share that with friends, it made us feel like we were part of something. And we connected in a way that I don't think there was any other way we could have connected.
Look, you connected over music when like you just said it. You wouldn't have connected over anything else, right? Now, in those days, smoking weed kind of went hand in hand. I mean, but like the thing is not everybody fucking smoked weed. It's not like today where it's like it's so fucking prevalent, right? You know, and I mean, and you didn't smoke all the goddamn time, right? You might smoke, somebody's got some weed, so you smoke some weed, and you don't smoke again for like 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later because you don't have any, you can't afford it. You know, I didn't have any money. I couldn't go out and buy a shit ton of weed or, you know, just go to the goddamn store and get weed like you can now. You know, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, I smoke weed, but it wasn't like it is now. It was like when I could afford it or when somebody else had it. And then it was like, okay, we got a joint. Well, that's it. We're done. You know, it's not like, oh, hang on. I got, you know, this and that, whatever the culture is now. I don't know, man. I as you know, maybe I wish I could smoke it, but it just makes me feel too fucking weird now. Right? And that's why I stopped smoking it, because I got paranoid when I smoked it. It wasn't fun anymore, you know? But back then, I am so grateful. Because, man, I'll tell you what, I would get a little stoned and I would listen to Rush, and it was godlike. I mean, you want to talk about having like an experience? Wow. You know, I could just imagine it, right? I'm listening to goddamn Cygnus X1 or whatever, and Neil's telling me the story and the band's playing. I'm just like, I can imagine this shit, man. You know? I'm so passionate about it. And I mean, as I get older, I have to remind myself a little bit, because I think you really get caught up in life. But man, that youthful, like, you know, you just didn't know any better. And I don't know, man. I'm so thrilled and happy I had that.
Well, and I'd like to remind you of that, because when I go to your show, when I go to the show, I catch a little bit of that. And for you, it's just another day at the office.
Yeah.
What's it like to be an older guy on the crew?
I mean, I try to impart to, you know, what I call kids now. I mean, they're not kids, they're younger than me, but it's just like, you know, hey kid, come here. You know, I mean, that same thing that I got fucking called eons ago when I was their age, right? I mean, I really try to, what I see as a problem today is troubleshooting. And when I say troubleshooting, it's like, okay, let's say it's a guitar rig, right? And your guitar rig doesn't work, it stops working, right? Well, I watch people like just go up and just like unplug a cable and plug it back in, and unplug a cable and plug it back in. Or they don't even try to figure out what cable's bad, they just go get new cables. Right? So it's like, okay, well, I guess you can do that, but if it's not the cable and it's a pedal, you haven't achieved anything. And now, by introducing a whole nother thing in, well, which cable was it? Is this new? Is this old? I mean, it's just, you have to start at the source, right? So let's say if you've got a guitar rig that doesn't work, and you have 5 pedals in the line, right? So it goes guitar, cable, into the pedal, through the pedals, out of the pedal, back to the amp, and it doesn't work. Well, instead of just doing that, what I would do is I just take a cable and go from the guitar to the amp. And if that works, then I one by one isolate the pedals and I isolate the patch cables. Now, if it don't work going into the amp, well then it sucks, but that's easier because you know it's not out here. It's something in the amp, or it's something in the cable going to the speakers or whatever. That's the thing that I just don't see people learning today, right? Because so much of it is done here. It's done on a keyboard, right? A computer, and like, you know, for instance, like, you know, digital audio, right? Not all the desks, because the band I currently work for, we tour with 2 analog desks, right? Because one of the performers prefers that, and that's great. But so much of it is done here where you've got like, okay, this compressor that's in the desk or whatever, and it's all just done in there. There's no physical aspect to it. So in some ways it's better because you eliminate all the patch cables, you eliminate the stuff failing or whatever. But when it goes pear-shaped and you lose the whole console, well, you're done, you know? I mean, I was on a tour like, what was it? I think it was REM, where we had out the Midas made, I don't know if it was their first digital consoles or early in the digital days for them for a console. It was 2008, right? And I forget what it was. We had one at Monitors and one at Front of House. Well, for whatever reason, we had a lot of problems with the one at Front of House, to the point where the Monitor guy had set up just a stereo mix of everything that he could put through the PA when the Front of House console went down. Now, no disrespect to Midas or whatever, but that's what happened, right? Like, I mean, growing pains or whatever, or, you know. But I remember that the Midas guy came out, and he was only supposed to be out for like the first couple shows, and he was out the entire US run. So, when it goes bad horribly. Whereas like when you had analog gear, or maybe it's just one piece of gear or whatever, you can eliminate it and still do the show, I don't know, it's whatever. And I think I've gotten off track from your question, but I don't know, Alan, I had the same guys going when I was young. I can remember like, you fucking kids don't listen, what the, I remember hearing it, right? Listen, kid, quit jumping off the goddamn stage, right? Your knees ain't gonna last forever. Yeah, whatever, and you know what you're doing, right? Well, he was right, man. And now I say that to guys like, you know what? You keep doing that shit, you're gonna end up old and broken like me, But I don't know. I think, some of them are okay with it and some of them aren't. It's like, that's fucking old guy doing here. Get rid of him, And that's okay. But it is kind of weird though when like your humor doesn't work, right? When I make like a fucking Hogan's Heroes reference, Sergeant Schultz, and I get looked at like, what in the fuck are you talking about, dude? Or the good one was on, and this is 98 Degrees, so this is like 20 some years ago, right? So what, 2001, I'm on the end of the elevated like platform we had, right? That looked like a freeway, for lack of a better word, and I had these smaller trusses called mini beams underneath to like support the end of it. I had chain motors off the grid that we had made, right, to hold it up and fly it, but we wanted to land it and make it more stable to the band to walk on and all that. So I need him to rotate the base of it. So I'm, whatever, I'm like 8 feet above his head on it. I'm like, come on, man, you got to rotate it counterclockwise, right? And he looks down and nothing's happening, and I'm like, you got to rotate it counterclockwise. And he looks up at me and he goes, digital watch, dude. What do you want? You want left or you want right? And I'm like, fair play. There you go. So that's one thing, and I don't know. I'm like, everybody they're so much better with tech than I am. And that's my own fault. It's not because like, there's plenty of people my age and older that are really, really good at it. And I work with a lot of them on tour. I mean, that's one thing about the Peppers is I'm definitely not the oldest guy on the tour. And there's quite a few guys that are like my age. I mean, 3 of the band guys are older than me. So on this tour, there's a lot of people that, I mean, like the youngest guy on the back line crew is 50. So that says something, I guess, but we've got a bunch of younger people as well, and bless them. I mean, I'm glad they're there. That's people coming in to take over and, run the ship, if you will. But, things change, right? I mean, it's, I'm sure that the guys that had started in like the 60s that were doing it, when it was like touring was really in its infancy, are looking at us going like, oh, we're fucked, dude. These guys, when I was like starting to come in the 80s and all that, I'd be like, oh, no fucking way, man. But whatever.
There's another thing you mentioned earlier that'd be interesting to talk about.